Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling channel. My name is Scott. We are here to talk all things Saturday night's main event. That feels weird to say, right? But it is back. It's sort of got a PLE vibe about it, and we'll be breaking down that topic and, of course, each and every one of the matches throughout tonight's stream. If you're new here, basically what we do is get yourself and us hyped up for the PLE. Again, it's kind of like a PLE tonight, so we're going to do it anyway. There's a lot to talk about and a lot to be excited about. I think we're going to be in for a good show. Before we get to Saturday night's main event, I guess we'll see this as Saturday night's preliminary show, if you will, or just pre-show. Here we go. Here's the intro for the build-up.
Welcome to the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling channel. On this channel, we bring you some great content from inside and outside of the squared circle. We will go through and offer some in-depth analysis of the biggest events of the year, as well as bringing you exclusive interviews with some of the industry's biggest names. There will also be live show reviews, in-depth features, and podcasts. So make sure you give that subscribe button a slam so you don't miss any of the action.
All right, welcome back to the channel, and thank you once again for tuning in. I'd love to know what you think of tonight's, again, sort of PLE. I'll keep saying it, and I'll, what are you looking forward to? Essentially, there's a pretty stacked card to break down in just a moment. Before we get to that, though, I see Sludge Sports is in the house. Thank you so much for coming back, Sludge. Always a pleasure to have you joining us for our live streams. And of course, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when I mention the build-up show being a great place to kind of get us all in the mood, right? So really excited to see not only what the show has in store for us, but what this show is going to be like. So again, drop your comments. Let me know what you're most looking forward to on tonight's card and what you thought of WWE lately, right? There's a lot of changes going on at the moment. There's the transfer window, which is a familiar term, of course, if you're into football, for example, which I do think they surely got the name from that. But yeah, either way, it means that Raw and SmackDown is being shaken up at the moment because, of course, we've got the Netflix deal going live essentially in just a few weeks' time. Of course, January 6th, the first Raw on Netflix. That's going to be quite fun to break down when we get closer to that as well. Then after that, we've got the Royal Rumble. What do you know? We are right on the road to WrestleMania. But before we jump ahead of ourselves there, let's deal with closing out 2024 with a bang. We're all in the festive spirit, right? Hopefully, WWE is going to continue to be that gift that keeps on giving. Now, tonight is going to be a special one because there is a nostalgic theme to tonight's show. Of course, it is a long tradition, really, in the WWE to have the Saturday night's main event. It used to be a show on NBC. Of course, now that is linked with Peacock, so it's a perfect kind of marriage, if you will. I've decided to throw it back myself. As you can see, the old Rowdy Roddy Piper gear on tonight as well. And of course, there are lots of rumors about what WWE are going to do themselves as far as having those nods towards the past. Now, I always enjoyed when WWE did those old school Raws, and I've got a feeling that it's going to be a little bit like that. My only complaint about those old school Raws, or I wouldn't say only complaint, there were a few things I didn't like. I didn't like the block WWE logo. I want the WWF logo, but I understand they can't really do that all the time. And also, it was a bit of a mismatch sometimes. I was a big fan of the Attitude Era, and I felt that they steered too far away from that sometimes on those old school Raws, and they couldn't decide what era they wanted it to be. Whereas I think tonight should probably just be exactly that. Stick to the 1980s stuff. Yes, you did have Saturday night's main events in the mid to late 2000s, but at the same time, they themselves were a callback to that original show. So we don't need kind of homages to the 2006 roster, if you kind of catch my drift. But yeah, really looking forward to it. Where is this show? Says Sludge Sports. It's in, I believe, it's where the first one took place. Is it Long Island? Let me just double check for you. The first ever one, I'm sure it might even be in the same building actually, where the original one took place, of course, all the way back in 1985, I believe. Let's just double check that. So yeah, the first one was in Nassau, New York. There we go. So you've got the Uniondale, City Uniondale, New York. Then the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum. I don't think that's the name of that venue anymore. You tend to get a lot of name changes out there in the States. Let's have a look. Oh, the Nassau Coliseum. Okay, it still is going on that name. I'm surprised it doesn't have kind of, modern branding and become the Uber arena or something like that you see, of course, around the world these days. But there you go. It's at Nassau Coliseum, an iconic wrestling venue, to be fair. And of course, as we mentioned, it's the place where the first ever Saturday Night's Main Event took place. Have you seen the Saturday Night's Main Event, guys, in the audience that are watching live with us tonight? Is this going to be your first experience of a Saturday Night's Main Event? And therefore, I guess you might not know what you're getting yourselves into, right? I mean, to be fair, none of us really do, because even the ones that took place in the 2000s were a little bit different to the originals. I was rewatching recently the one that did act as the revival, and it was a bit of a strange one. You had Shane McMahon versus HBK in the main event in a street fight, and just a whole lot of random stuff going on, and it was really hyping up WrestleMania. Sludge says it is the first time. Well, Sludge, I hope you enjoy this entry, I guess, into the world of Saturday Night's Main Event. It looks like they're already doing another one, right? There's one coming up just before the Royal Rumble, I believe, about a week before the Royal Rumble, and that one will surely act as is just mentioned, the one that took place a few years ago, well, about 15 years ago now, was acting pretty much as an ad for WrestleMania. I want to say 22 WrestleMania. Was it WrestleMania? What's the one that had WrestleMania big time? Was that 22? Was that 21? No, 20. Yeah, 22. I'm sure that's the same year they brought back Saturday Night's Main Event. But basically, that show acted as an ad for WrestleMania, and I don't remember feeling that way as much at the time. I think I just remember thinking, well, yeah, WrestleMania's around the corner because we're going to keep mentioning it. But watching it back in 2024, Scott's eyes, it really felt like just an ad for WrestleMania. And I do feel like that one the week before the Royal Rumble is pretty much going to be the same. Now, this one here in December, to me, at the moment, because we're not promoting something else, but then I start to think, hold on a minute, is this going to be a heavy push for Raw going on Netflix? Bit awkward, different companies and all that kind of stuff, but not like they haven't done it before. This one actually felt like a replacement for a PLE, right? Because we don't have a PLE in December. I know Lucas is thinking about actually coming on here and chat to you guys a little bit more about how the December PLE slot just feels kind of doomed in some ways. You know, you famously had December to Dismember, which was the infamous ACW PLE that failed, or pay-per-view as it would have been known at the time, for many reasons. But then you had shows like Vengeance and Armageddon. TLC, of course, up until recently was the December PLE as well. And then even in that January period, you know, they toyed around with Day One, which became a Raw event. You've had New Year's Revolution as well. So there's certainly been a bit of a theme, really, when it comes to the end of the year and the beginning of the new year, being a bit of a kind of confusing time for WWE as far as stamping tradition on it. So bringing back a traditional event that isn't necessarily linked to December maybe was the way to do it this year. And as I say, it feels like it's that stopgap almost to the next PLE. But I think a lot of people are considering this as a PLE. It feels special, right? And most PLEs these days are on Saturday nights, which is great for us over here in the UK, because it means, generally speaking, if you've got the Sunday off, you can now recover from staying up late and recover from us on the build-up show, where, as you guys know, we like to get a little bit off script with it. This is where we get a little bit looser. So I'd love to know what you guys are eating and drinking tonight as your pre-match meals and drinks, and what you'll be having, of course, throughout the. I keep going to say PLE, but again, it's not a. Is it a PLE? I don't know, man. I really don't know what's going on. All I know is that I'm excited. I'm here repping the hot rods and 90s, 80s wrestling. And speaking of which, what surprises are we going to see tonight, guys? A, linking to the current roster. We'll get into some of those theories in a moment. But B, linking back to, again, those nods to the past. Now, later on in the show, we're going to have Lucas, as I mentioned a moment ago. He's going to be talking to you soon, hopefully, about that December slot. But tonight, he's going to be joining us, talking all things Saturday night's main event as well. Sludge, you're having a tostada with a Pepsi. Sludge, I swear, last month you was having something else for Survivor Series that I didn't know. I don't think I know what a tostada is. Have I heard of that before? I think that tostada. Oh, it's like it's like a tortilla. Oh, right, okay, right, yeah, all right, cool, nice. What are you having in it? Let me know. Right, let's get to the action. Before my belly starts grumbling some more, let's talk about what the card is going to be tonight. Now, a big match going into tonight's show will be, or a lot of the talking point really is going to be around this title match and whether or not we will see a title change or whether or not we're going to see anything of significance on this show, actually, as far as storyline progression. Now, we've got Gunther defending against Finn Bálor and his former running buddy, Damian Priest. And it looks like, to me, that this is an opportunity to just kind of progress some storyline in the sense that Damian and Finn clearly have unresolved issues and Gunther needs something to do, right? So I don't really see this as a place to take the title off of him, although I'd like to see it. And if it did happen, not that I don't like Gunther being the champ, but if it did happen, I think it should be going on Finn Bálor. Look, big fan of Damian Priest. I think he proved a lot of people wrong, as he tends to do time and time again. But for me, taking the title off of the guy that you lost it to, just, I don't know, while sometimes that can work, this time around I think it would be a little bit odd. And again, that's not to say I don't want Damian Priest to be in that prominent position again. I'm a big fan of his work, even bigger fan of the man himself, who's been so lovely to us in the past. We've had the great opportunity to be able to chat with him. And if you haven't already, again, please subscribe and check out more of our content, including interviews with the likes of Damian Priest. But look, for me, it's just not time for Damian to win this title back. And if it is going to go onto new hands, essentially, it needs to be completely new hands and someone that hasn't held the title before in Finn Bálor. Now, they've touched on it pretty much every single time Bálor goes for a title, right? That day reign that he had of the Universal years back. It's a great way to kind of, fuel up a storyline. Annoyingly, though, it's all completely true. Like, he's never won a world title since then, other than being NXT champion. He's never had a main roster world title other than that one day holding the Universal. Ironically, the first ever Universal champion, and had to vacate it. So for me, I'd love to see him win this title. I really thought he should have beat Seth for it about, a year ago, whatever it was now. I thought everyone should beat Seth for it. Again, not that I'm not a fan of Seth, but I just felt a brand new title. Yeah, make it look big. Brand new title. We know where it kind of technically leads into as far as lineage goes. The old World Heavyweight title, of course. But for me, I think Seth should just make the title and then lose the title to someone that deserved to have a world title, but even never had one, like Shinsuke Nakamura or Finn Bálor, who, again, only had one for a day. So for me, if anyone's taking it tonight, as far as who I want it to be, it is Finn Bálor. Moving away from resting for a moment into the important topics, of course, tomato, lettuce, chicken, and some sauce. And I might go to Red Rooster after because it's my cheat day. Well, it is a cheat day indeed. You are going big for Saturday night's main event, Sludge. Love to hear it. And again, my belly has started to grumble once more. Now, what do you guys think about the main? Well, I say main event there's no chance that's main event. It isn't. Let's be honest. And that, again, even that's a shame, man. Like, it shouldn't be so obvious, but it feels it, right? Unless, if this went on last, if this was the main event, Saturday night's main event, Damian Priest for Finn Bálor and Gunther, then I think there would have to be huge storyline progression. I think Gunther would have to be dropping the title. So if this does somehow go on last, then I'll be very shocked and then open to what they're going to do and, how they can justify that, essentially. Because as much as, again, I enjoy the work of all three of these men, I just don't see it happening. And if it does happen, it's got to be, in my opinion, Finn Bálor. Now, I mentioned earlier on that we've had the great opportunity to chat to Damian Priest. We've also had the opportunity to chat to none other than Finn Bálor on this very channel as well. And you know what? We've also ticked off the third member of this match, Gunther. for himself and Ludwig Kaiser. The chat to them, representing Imperium, of course, as well. So once again, if you haven't already, please subscribe and check out our interviews with those guys. Now, Sludge says, Gunther and Finn will beat Damian's ass, getting him out of contention in 5 minutes, making it a singles match where Gunther will win. Look, that's a way to go, but the thing is, I guess that makes Damian look really weak, right? And that's a bit of a risk. We mentioned earlier on how he's done a lot to prove people wrong and change opinion of him, but I gotta be honest, like, he started to slip lately, and I think he needs to look strong. I don't think strong enough to win the title, but he can't look like a chump. You know, he can't be in this match to be the fall guy. It would not be good for him. So it'd be interesting to see what they do with that. No, I mean, even the whole Judgment Day thing, you know, Finn's been kind of alluding to kind of doing things on his own a little bit lately as well. So that's kind of maybe got, a spanner in the works there as well. So maybe we'll see some sort of Judgment Day implosion in this match. That'll be an interesting kind of route that they could take. But ultimately, I do think if we're kind of nailing down a prediction here, guys, I'm going to go for Gunther. If I'm going to go for something I'd like to see, ultimately, I think I'd like to see Gunther continue holding the title for now. But if anyone's going to beat him right now in this moment, I'd like it to be Finn Bálor. Because then at least if he was holding up the title at the end of the night and held it for at least, well, until Raw, there you go, 2 nights, he'd done better than he did last time, and I'd be happy with that. I mean, don't get me wrong, it'd be a shame if he lost it on Raw as well, but still, you get what I'm saying, right? JXSTJAY, I guess that's J 2007 says, or is it, I see from your picture there, Jixt, that's a cool name. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Is it going to be live on YouTube? So the Saturday Night's Main Event show itself, depending on where you are around the world, is of course in various different places. But I do know that in the UK where I am, and I believe maybe in Canada, or was it Australia I saw this on, don't quote me, it's also going to be on YouTube. So on YouTube here in the UK, and I know several countries around the world will be showing it for free on YouTube, as you suggest there. Thanks to you for joining us, by the way, over on the stream on Twitch. If you haven't already, follow us on Twitch as well. Rebellious Noise's main channel over there. Now, of course, in the States, it will be on NBC, I believe, on Peacock tonight as well. Yeah, I'd love to know where you guys are tuning in from, actually. When are they going live? And yes, I'm in the UK. South Wales. Oh, fantastic. Great to have another fan joining us from the UK here as well. South Wales. Now, look, I was over in Wales for Clash at the Castle. Those interviews I just kind of previewed just there took place at Clash as well. Beautiful, beautiful country, Wales. And yeah, really looking forward to going back. I mean, that's a great thing about these WWE PLEs going to international venues, right? It really does create a buzz when it comes to tourism and stuff like that. So yeah, were you at Clash yourself, buddy? Let me know. Hopefully we'll get another PLE out in Wales sometime soon, or anywhere in the UK for the matter. Now, let's move on to another match to predict here. We've got Sami Zayn going up against the returning Drew McIntyre. Now, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to Drew alone within this match. Now, got to get a bit of light refreshment there, guys. Drew McIntyre versus Sami Zayn. Something to look forward to. Oh, hold on. Before we get to that, I'm in Wales as well. New South Wales. Oh, yeah. I remember, Sludge, you're from Australia. There we go. We got South Wales and New South Wales represented in the comments. Are there any other links we could do to Wales or South Wales there? Who knows? Sami gets squashed in 5 minutes. You know, I wouldn't be surprised there, Sludge. I would not be surprised. And I wouldn't be offended by that either. Look, and I've said it a few times tonight already. As much as I like the guy, I'm fine with Sami Zayn just getting bad tonight, because he doesn't really need to do much else beyond that. And actually, it helps his character, I think, in a way. He's the kind of character that will kind of springboard off of something like that, almost an injustice, especially if Drew goes kind of mega heel with it, which you can kind of see coming, right? Also, I think Drew will win really quick, because there are 5 matches, ads, and it's only 2 hours. Is it really only 2 hours? I didn't know that. Wow. Okay. I was assuming it would be at least 3 hours. So if it is only 2 hours, then yeah, you are right. I mean, this really does make it feel a lot more like a Raw or a SmackDown, right? Which, to be fair, Saturday night's main event has always kind of been. It's been that middle ground between your weekly show, and your PLE or your pay-per-views, it would have been known back then. Kind of as far as, importance and presentation, again, it's somewhere in the middle of the two. But because they are so few and far between, usually at least, they feel, of course, rare, and therefore they feel really exciting as well. So they have the kind of allure and the kind of intrigue that a PLE has, almost more so, because although, like I mentioned earlier on, the one from leading up to WrestleMania wasn't a pay-per-view, it's memorable. And although it wasn't a great show or a big card or anything like that, it's memorable because it stood out, because it was a different kind of presentation and stuff like that. What time are WWE live streaming on YouTube, if you know? Well, the show itself, as far as the UK goes, starts at 1 p.m. So I assume it's going to start there. I'm not sure if WWE are doing a countdown. I don't think they are. I tried to look it up the other day and I didn't see anything on their channel. That may have changed since, of course, but I don't think they're doing a countdown. Now, if you are new here, by the way, what we usually do on these build-up streams is basically act as a watch-along for the countdown show. So if the countdown is going ahead, then we'll put that on ourselves and we'll kind of let you know what's going on there. We'll act as a watch-along pre-show. A countdown watch-along is what I'm trying to say. But we also act as an individual kind of separate pre-show from, of course, WWE's content as well. Now, at the moment, as you can see, I'm riding solo, other than you lovely guys in the comments and lurking in the background as well. But later on, we will be joined by Lucas. And how we do it on this channel is we have members of our team, but also members of the wrestling media hopping in and out. Now, sadly, I don't think any of our friends from the wrestling media are joining us tonight, other than our friends within the Rebellious Noise group itself. But that's what we do, essentially. On the night of a PLE, again, we try to get us and you guys hyped up for the PLE, and we talk about last minute rumors, we break down the card, we do predictions, and we just generally have a bit of a fun night, essentially, heading into the PLE. So we'd love it if you subscribed and stick with us again over on Twitch there, but also here on the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling channel. I would love to do some clashes with you if you have Instagram. We could watch shows together and predict matches if you want, a really good something if you're up to it. Yeah, man. We are on Instagram, so send us something on at RN Pro Wrestling is our Instagram, RN for Rebellious Noise. Yeah, we'll see if we can make something happen. We are doing some Instagram and TikTok content quite a bit lately. And we do usually have our prediction shows on this channel as well. But yeah, if we can make something work, then why not? We are looking into actually trying to see if we can do something where we get you guys involved. It's lovely to have your comments and stuff like that. But we are looking at maybe trying to get in things like exactly what you say there, videos and stuff like that. So yeah, great to have you with us tonight, mate. I really do appreciate it. And again, want to know what you guys think is gonna happen on Saturday night's main event. As I say, we are the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling channel. You can find us on TikTok, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Everybody's jumping ship at the moment, right? So we might as well give it a go as well. If you're over there, hey, subscribe, follow, whatever you call it these days, at RN Pro Wrestling. Let's get back to some of the card itself, though, guys. And again, we were talking a little bit there about Sami and Drew. My prediction kind of is what Sludge said earlier on, maybe, actually. Sami just getting battered and Drew just kind of beating him really quickly. It does seem like the kind of match. Oh, it wasn't. I know it was Sludge that said that. Yeah, it does seem like the kind of thing they would do for both characters, as I say. I don't know if you guys saw, but Drew was on a podcast the other day. I think it was a Busted Open Radio pod with Bubba Ray. And he basically did like a what looks to have been a work shoot. I might mention this when Lucas comes on later on to get his kind of verdict on it as well. I feel like it's one of those things where he was talking truth and kind of, as they say in wrestling, turning it up to 11, basically to emphasize this stuff. So I think there's truth in it. And it's like one of those things where two things could be true at once at sometimes, where, maybe he's happy with his career and his life and his relationships at work and wherever else, but at the same time really does appreciate what he's got at home, and it's made him realize that wrestling's not everything, sort of thing. And you can have these moments of thinking like, what's the point and all that kind of stuff, and maybe he's just kind of playing off of that. Maybe that's not the way Drew feels all the time, but we all have our kind of down days and things that lead towards them, right? So I do think there was an element of truth in there, even if it's not the way that Drew might feel all the time. I do think he was drawing on something that was quite real, just by the way you kind of delivered it, right? You know, I mean, I think Drew is an incredible performer as far as that believability, really. Anyway, I honestly think that this past year he's done so many things that I've thought, is that legit? Like, and if it's not, it's coming from a place where he's tapping into something that is legit and twisting it, essentially. I think he's been pretty much one of the MVPs, if not the MVP of this year. And that's strange to say when the guy hasn't held the title and kind of dipped out for a few months here and there as well, and lost essentially the big feud he was involved with in CM Punk. Not saying he shouldn't have lost that feud, but essentially that's the way it kind of felt in the end. And that's okay when you're a heel, right? And I think his work as a heel has been just, again, phenomenal. And I think he's continuing really to build on the legacy of Drew McIntyre. I think he's one of those that when he does turn face again, like it'll be different to the last time when he was in that kind of Thunderdome era, but it will be something that fans really enjoy. He definitely got quite stale. And again, that's no fault of Drew's. That's just the way things tend to go with a babyface after a while. Bianca Belair, John Cena are great examples of this as well. Again, big fans of their work, but we all know how it is. But yeah, I think Drew was starting to suffer from that. Bianca, I mean, they might be putting the trigger on her as well. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, in due course as well. But let's get back to some more comments here as well. I keep trying to think how you say your name, but I'm just going to call you Jay because I see your J there, right? That's okay. Anyway, Drew's my favorite. He's been the best year of his career, not only winning the world title at WrestleMania, but also the feud with CM Punk. Oh, you're right. He did win the world title. Here's me saying, oh, he hasn't had a belt or anything. He did, just not for very long. I forgot all about that, buddy. And you say, oh, okay, it's Jay. Good. Is that like, okay, cool. I got you. Right, Jay. Thank you very much, buddy. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, you're right, Jay. Drew did become world champion, and there was that cool moment, right, where the Money in the Bank was cashed in by Damian Priest, who we were talking about earlier on. Man, how could I forget that? That's one of my favorite moments of the year. Damian Priest's music hitting, and I was just shouting and screaming, yes, I was so happy with that. So yeah, hopefully we get back there with Damian, and hopefully Drew gets more rewards as well. Talking of rewards, you viewers are going to be rewarded now because we are going to bring in our special correspondent here, if you will, talking all things Saturday night main event, and I'd love to get his view on this because I know he's a big fan of old school wrestling and the glory days of this show as well. So here we are bringing in Mr. Lucas. How you doing, mate? Oh, you're muted.
Every time.
It was all going well, mate. It was all going well. How you doing?
No, I'm doing well. It feels weird the pay-per-view being, well, not pay-per-view, the show, sorry, being at 1 a.m.
Yeah. We've been spoiled, haven't we? You know?
Give to some early starts. I know we've got a few early ones for the UK anyway, coming into 2025. But now this is an interesting one because something that's actually getting forgotten in this is that they're actually doing another Saturday Night's Main Event next month as well, aren't they?
Yeah, before the Rumble.
Just for the Rumble, which I find quite interesting. Because I thought of, like, in my head, I'm like, this one makes sense because, you know, I was going to get a chance to get around to the video on the December pay-per-views, but obviously for years they've kind of had a kind of tumultuous relationship with December, it seems. Like, you know, they've tried obviously different things, you know, whether it be they had the Vengeance show 2001, where obviously famously everyone knows now Chris Jericho beat The Rock and Stone Cold on the same night and became Undisputed Champion, or the first Undisputed Champion. You know, they've been about 10 since then.
Yeah, true.
As they merged the other belts. And then obviously they put TLC in that spot for a number of years and actually ended that in 2020. But they've always kind of struggled in December to get an event kind of going. And you know, for years, obviously Vince, you know, ran TV all through the holiday season. Instead, that kind of felt like it, you know, kind of what they were doing instead. But yeah, you know, it has been in the last few years at least where we haven't seen a December event run. And we trialled obviously day one. I think I only lost in one go around, wasn't it? One go around for day one.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, that was January. It's kind of in the name, Lucas, but
but over that period, but what I'm getting at is they've essentially gone back to the old school way of having Survivor Series and then the Rumble as the next event. But I think they're seeing that there is that market for that stopgap, and this is what they're at. They actually returned, I don't know if people knew this, but they actually returned to doing Saturday Night's Main Event last year on house shows. Which,
oh yeah, you're right, they did.
Yeah, they branded a few of them around this time of year. Actually, they branded a few of them, as Saturday Night's Main Events, and I guess they saw success with that. And people aren't familiar. This has obviously been done because of the deal with USA Network, as obviously SmackDown, they've lost obviously NXT and Raw to obviously the CW and Netflix respectively, and obviously in international markets, I think both are on Netflix internationally, and obviously have gained SmackDown. So they've lost, obviously, they've lost at least 2 hours of wrestling a week. Yeah, as SmackDown is due to go to 3 hours eventually, is the belief, maybe even as quickly as January. So it will obviously join its Raw counterpart. But I mean, Saturday Night's Main Event, it's kind of fitting into that nice little stopgap, isn't it? Yeah. We don't have a December pay-per-view. We are a fair few weeks removed from War Games, and we still kind of digest that. It is obviously important to remember that half the men's match are injured, so it is kind of, we are kind of at a new kind of starting point, it seems, for all these things. And in a weird way, we kind of pause a lot of these feuds and rivalries. Like Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens, both nowhere to be seen in War Games. Very much part of the match, which most likely will close the show today. I'm not too sure. I'm not sure fully, but I think it will. Yeah, same. I think it will, particularly because it opened Bash in Berlin, obviously back in the summer, which feels like does it just feel like summer was years ago now? It does indeed. It's cold out there, man. Yeah. But yeah, I imagine it will close your show tonight. Surprised if it doesn't. I don't know, unless they do the weird. It's going to go on first, and because they want to. I mean, because it is more like a traditional in some ways. It's not a PLE, but it kind of feels like a PLE. But like I say, it's a TV special. They could, like say, kind of bump it at the very beginning, but then they always like to close with something big, even on Raw. Do you know what I mean? They build up for the 6-man tag or whatever it may be. So I was talking before you came on air about the potential of the world title going on last. Now, unless there's a title change or any sort of significant storyline progression, that's not really going to be the case. But yeah, it's an interesting show because, as you say, we are in that kind of awkward stopgap. We don't quite know what the show is. And I was saying earlier on, again, before you came on the air, that I'd rewatched recently the one that they when they first brought it back in the mid-2000s, going into WrestleMania 22. And I watched it with kind of 2024 eyes and saw it as, this is just an ad for WrestleMania. And it felt really strange. But I don't know if I felt that way at the time. I think it just felt like, well, of course, we're leading towards WrestleMania. There's a lot of talk about it, So, but then you did have a few that felt a little bit more special on their own. And we mentioned on War Game stream, Raw Homecoming and events like that kind of tied into this similar kind of theme as well. But this one feels like, as you say, as a stopgap, whereas the one in January, surely, because it is a week before the Rumble, will all be about promoting the Rumble. So it's an interesting kind of move. Essentially, it does feel like this is a way to reintroduce the show, and then the next ones will maybe lean more into being ways to get more eyes on a bigger product as far as the PLE goes, and technically stealing people away from Peacock and going to Netflix eventually anyway. I think how we will see them is because they refuse to have a pre-show at their events, which are increasingly longer and longer and longer, despite having less and less matches. We're going to see this as like the pre-show of the events, because obviously we will get to some of the matches that are taking place tonight. But obviously, we are another match which I thought might main event just because it's a new title is the Women's US. Oh yeah, great point. They like a new title, and the presentation, of it. Is always deemed to be important, and it's a first. It ticks a lot of boxes. But the thing is, this might be the one that actually opens the show. So they have, that's another. It's interesting tonight. Really, there's two massive spots: the first match and the last match. Now, it's interesting you mentioned the 2006 reboot, because originally Saturday Night's Main Event was designed to basically be a de facto kind of advert, kind of like just kind of low-key kind of show. I mean, if you see some of the results from some of the early Saturn Night back in the 80s and 90s, there were barely matches above 2 minutes, 3 minutes long. It was all kind of angle-based and, you know, and yeah, it was all kind of angle-based, essentially. And then when they brought it back in 2006, it was very much the same. And then one has to remember, back then, their schedule was insane. In terms of, obviously, even though they had the brand split, there were still the house show tours. There was still, for a short while, there was, you know, for a short while, what existed was Raw, SmackDown, house shows, Saturday Night's main events, you know, split, you know, brand-specific pay-per-views, and the, you know, big four, you know, that we had back then. And so there was a lot of you know, a lot of days on the road for the wrestlers. And so Saturday Night's main event was always kind of that kind of, okay, we're going to book big names, they'll be doing angles or squash matches or something a bit different from the norm. And so, but tonight it just seemed, well, there is 5 matches, you know, including championship matches and, you know, stuff which you have to imagine is going to be given some time. But it is a 2-hour broadcast. They can't do that.
Yeah, so I didn't realise this. It was brought up in the comments earlier on, I believe, by GA, who's joined us over on our Twitch, actually. And yeah, he was basically saying, look, it's a 2-hour show, and you've got to have not only the 5 matches, but you've also got to have, you know, the ad breaks and trying to squeeze in, you know, whatever kind of nostalgia pop they want to get in as well. And we'll get to some of the nostalgic elements in a little bit, but you're right, there's a lot to squeeze in. I mean, it's mad because we've talked quite often on the channel lately about the 5-match card and how that fits into the current regime. And when I saw 5 matches again, I just started to automatically think, oh, it's at least a 3-hour show. But yeah, it's going to be very different. And again, the pacing will be different because of ads and stuff like that, which you don't have to think about on the PLE. So it'd be a very strange show.
What's obviously interesting with it is the fact that, you know, they're going to have to. SmackDown, generally speaking, is at the moment is a 2-hour show, and generally speaking has 4 matches on it. Every single time, you know, I skim results or I watch bits and pieces from the shows, and SmackDown tends to have 4 matches.
Yeah.
Obviously, the main event being kind of given quite some time, but sometimes it's not always the case. Sometimes the main event does start, and there's barely 15 minutes left of the program. Similar thing to what NXT goes through. But NXT in particular is very, very, I'll say it's good at it, even though I don't like it fully, but it's very good at kind of giving shorter matches on their shows. They're happy to put a 2-minute, 3-minute match on, which, you know, there's both sides of the coin with that. Whereas with the main roster, it does very much seem like the format does tend to be the 4 matches and them all kind of getting decent.
Yeah.
Plus the angles and promo segments. Now, it'd be interesting seeing, like, you talk about pacing. I think that's very important for me, where I'm just like, you know, I want to feel what the difference is between 5 matches on a Saturday Night's main event versus 5 matches on a 3.5. You know, we're talking about they're getting increasingly longer, these events.
Yeah.
You know, we were promised that these events, when, you know, 5 matches, the whole point was keeping it around that 3-hour mark. And it's, you know, it hasn't always been that case. And we see how that goes tonight, like what the difference, how it feels. And
yeah,
you have to imagine as much as this one won't be like, you know, an advert for next pay-per-view, I think it might have been an advert for Netflix.
Yeah, see, I mentioned that earlier on as well, but it's not that they haven't done this before, don't get me wrong, but it's a strange way to do things when you're basically, again, saying, hey, look over here at a rival. It is. I know in America they're still gonna, you know, network's still gonna be on Peacock for a while, but it's still, you know, a strange way to do things. I'm gonna quickly get to some of these comments actually that we've got here. Dragon Lee. Oh, apparently the real Dragon Lee. Yo muchacho, I'm not on the show, and also says, I need De Niro, amigo. Well, Dragon Lee, if that's the real DragonLee, buddy, oh man, I'm shocked. I'm shocked you're not being booked tonight. Just Jay says, I hated when Priest cashed in. I was so sorry because I'm originally from Scotland and I've met Drew a lot of times. My family is close to his, and I was lucky to have the opportunity to go to WrestleMania 40. Oh, mate, no, I completely understand there. Look, for me, it was just a great moment, and I liked it. It was almost a positive to me for Drew because he was playing that incredible heel role. I thought, you know what, this is what that heel needs as well. It adds to their story, added to CM Punk. But I get where you're coming from. I mean, for me, Drew not winning, in Glasgow was one thing, but him not winning in Cardiff was, well, that was, I mean, I've spent a lot of time being angry about that. So I hate you, Dragon Lee, says Sludge Sports. I forgot about that. Sludge, you don't like Dragon Lee. Just Jay says it sucks. Before the show, he told me he was going to win. Well, it turns out he didn't. But yeah, again, as we mentioned earlier on, been doing some incredible work this past year, and probably is going to be a short match. I'll get your thoughts on that one in a moment, Lucas. But before we do, just want to go into a match you touched on briefly already. Really, we've got the US title being kind of shoved into the forefront here, right? We've got a brand new version of it. It's the women's US title now. You got Michin, of course. I was going to say defending. No one's the champ, but she's going up against Chelsea Green. And this one is kind of hard to pick for me because I can see it going both ways, and I would appreciate it going both ways, right? I think Michin is someone that has kind of been at that level where this makes a lot of sense to give her this title, right? There's a lot of people on the women's roster who maybe wouldn't get the world title and need maybe a stepping stone to get to that level. And I think Michin is one of those people that have been presented that way. They clearly see a lot in her because they've done some cool things with her in the past, from making her officially part of the WWE version of the Bullet Club, essentially, and teaming her with AJ. They've used her well in NXT. They've given her several different opportunities on the main roster, including recently where I think they've really highlighted her work quite well. And then on the opposite side of the coin, you've got Chelsea Green, someone who I personally believe does deserve a reward like this because she is in a position with a character that doesn't often get to have rewards because of the type of character she plays. Now, if this title was already established, I could see her having it, a kind of Santina Marella being the IC champion type situation. But her becoming the first ever champion, I'm not sure if that's the right way to go because of the type of character she has. And it's not saying she doesn't deserve it and that she hasn't worked hard or that it wouldn't be good in some way. But I think you kind of need to be taken seriously. You kind of need to have a serious wrestler win it, if that makes sense. But again, my heart is saying, but look at the moment. Look how cool it is when she wins anything and people act surprised and really excited for her because she's a very likable character, which is weird to say because she's designed to not be a likable character. But what I'm saying is either way, I think I'm going to be happy for whoever wins. And I'm torn as far as what direction WWE might want to go in for this one. So what are your thoughts as far as giving a new title to maybe a somewhat comedy character, or do you go in the other direction with somewhat more of a serious character?
Yeah, I mean, I think Michin was working with Bayley, I believe, back in around August time, wasn't it, I believe? Michin had the street fight against Nia Jax.
Yeah, and that main evented, didn't it? Like they were.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
We speak about this quite a lot, where we see that they WWE position little kind of challenges and stepping stones for people, and to have their little moments. And I think that was a big moment for Michin. She came off the back of a very successful stint down in NXT. Where she, worked with Jada Parker, who, I think in terms of NXT women has been presented like very strongly, and someone who one would imagine as already kind of splitting her from the OTM kind of group, that she might make waves on the main roster into next year or the year after. Then you got Chelsea Green, who has just been the gift that kept on giving, isn't it? I think, and obviously, again, they sent her down to NXT. She worked with Julia. Julia's first, match in the company was against Chelsea Green, and she's always kind of been positioned in that spot of kind of almost, but not quite. But yeah, it's a really hard one, this, because obviously, there's a lot of talk about this. We've spoken about this with people on the channel several times, and it kind of feels like, obviously, it's rushed to kind of get out there. But here we are anyway. And we have, obviously, a women's IC title as well coming soon. And if the rumours about that potentially, Natalia is a top kind of contender for that one, allegedly, within the company, being true. If that is true, then that leads me to think that this is why they've done what they've done here, where they're going for kind of two newer performers and, you know, in this kind of contention.
Yeah.
One would have to imagine that the first kind of match that the champion faces will be whoever loses tonight.
Right. Yeah, like a rematch,
first,
essentially.
kind
Yeah.
of rematch or title shot.
Yeah.
With that being said, again, I'm with you. Like, I think either way, I think I'm leaning more towards Chelsea Green winning.
Mm.
I think she is the best presented of the two, just because of that. And, you know, just thinking of different options, it feels like there's more options for Chelsea Green versus Michin. But then it's just now about creating options, because we're entering territory that they've never had to enter before, the women. They've never had to enter into having to book women not in either the, you know, world or women's world title picture, or in these weird feuds where basically men are involved, and so the feud is more what the men are doing, and the women are kind of fighting either for their men or next to their men or with their men. They WWE never have had to rebook like that. So this will be interesting, because now, yes, like they're going to have to start building a division, obviously on SmackDown, to accommodate, you know, to get more women on the show. And this is where Triple H has wanted to speak to, you know, Shawn Michaels down in NXT, because he's using women a lot.
Yeah, I mean, there's an incredible crop of talent.
Sometimes, you know, I'm thinking we're not too far from them just saying, you know what, we can have a week of NXT where she's women. Like, we're not going to have them in a
Yeah, they could for sure.
They've got so many women there, and Triple H finds a way. Like every week, you know, there's at least 2 or 3 women's matches. I'm talking. You know, they got obviously the main women's title. They got the women's North American title, and they have the Fatal Influence stable, and they have other tag teams and alliances within the women's division there, and they are featured regularly in matches and in segments. So Triple H will have to, going back to what someone said a few minutes ago, you know, SmackDown and present is 4 matches. You know, it's 4 matches. You know, and if you want to go again 50-50 booking, are you then saying, okay, well, one of the women's match is going to be involving the US title scene, and the other women's match is going to be involving the world title scene, and you've got 2 matches. You know, but then even that, like, you think if the 2 men's matches don't involve your tag team champions, then they're going to go for show. Which again, we haven't seen the tag titles in months anyway, on the PLE. So this will be interesting. I think, you know, Triple H will have to. It's something I think, much as I'm not like against Triple H, but I do think that there are certain things where he seems to be digging his heels in, and he's obsessed with certain formats and stuff. But we're at the stage when something will need to change. I know, you know, this extra hour, you know, if when it gets that extra hour, if that opens up a couple more match spots, that's good. But if it's still going to be just the same format, just over 3 hours, then we need to start having questions, because something, you know, I was not a fan of towards the end of the 3-hour era for Raw was just the fact that there was just so much dedicated to one storyline. You know, every single time you turned on, you know, and I get that this, you know, no wrong, this happened previously, but it was always done like very like briefly. Like when you watch the pacing of Raw, you know, Raws in the past was just much quicker. Do you know what I mean? Like much snappier. Now it's like you have to have a 15-minute opening promo. Then there's like another promo later on in the show. Then they're having 15-20-minute matches with angles that are there like 10-15 minutes after, you know, 10-15 minutes after the match as well, just to get one storyline, one feud going. You know, but yeah, I think this one is interesting for me because both ways. I think there's strengths to both, but I think just Chelsea edges it. I think her promo delivery is better, which I think might be the clincher here. Don't get me wrong, I don't think Michin's bad on the mic, whatever, but I just think Chelsea Green, presentation-wise, she's just more there. Yeah. And it might just be the good first champ. And again, it might even be where if she wins it, does a few promotional appearances as it, and Michin can become the second champion down the line. Maybe even at that next Saturday night's main event. You know, that could be how to do it. They book, you know, that's 6 weeks. You know, I think someone like Chelsea Green, I understand, you know, doesn't need the belt forever.
Yeah. I mean, again, some of these titles you sometimes see as a reward. You mentioned Natalia and the IC. I think she deserves to get one of these mid-card titles, and that would be a good way to do it, as you say. Some, you know, veteran on one side and the younger talents on the other side of it as well. But again, just echoing what you say, really, I think either way it would be good, and they would probably likely do a rematch and maybe switch it to the other person eventually anyway. And again, I wouldn't be against that. Be interested to see the order of things, because if you do go Chelsea first and then Michin, can you get Chelsea's moment, which might be better actually, get Chelsea's moment, turn her into a heel where she tries to move away from those cheers that she's clearly getting, so that Michin's win means something, because the other way around it might be more risky. If Michin wins it and people are like, but we wanted Chelsea, that could turn people against Michin. So it'd be interesting to see how they go with that. A few more comments to get to as well. Heart Attack 35 says, hi, how are you two? Doing good, buddy. Thank you so much for joining us again. We're the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling channel if you're new here, and this is the build-up show. We usually do it for PLEs, and we figured, well, this kind of feels like a PLE, so we've gone live to do the same here tonight. And we appreciate everyone that joins us, and we'd love to know what you think is going to happen on tonight's main event. Again, see this as Saturday night's preliminary show, and later on you'll be seeing Saturday night's main event. Now, going back to the match we were just talking about, Lucas, we've got a comment here from Sludge Sports. I'm going to ask you to do this one for me, mate.
He's saying Chelsea Green.
100% says Sludge.
Like her, but yeah. Okay, well, glad you kind of agree. I don't think anyone, I don't know, I haven't seen many comments on people kind of hating it either way.
Nah.
But definitely it's going to be an interesting one. Like you said, something you touched upon just then, Scott, was obviously, you know, these belts may be seen as rewards for certain women. And because obviously one has to remember with the main women's championships, Becky Lynch held the belt for a year. Bianca Belair held the belt for a year. We've seen long reigns from Rhea Ripley. We've seen long reigns from Ronda Rousey a few years back. You know, it got to the point where, similarly to obviously what's going on in the men's and the WWE and Universal Undisputed, whatever it's called now, Championship, you know, there was only one story that was dominating that entire championship. And so I think these mid-card belts is good because, you know, there's someone like Natalia, when you think she hasn't won a belt since, was she tag champion with Tamina, I want to say?
Yeah.
2021.
And even still, I think giving her a title like a world title, no disrespect to her, because she should have had more under her resume at this point anyway. But it kind of, unless it really makes sense and nothing else does, I just can't see it anymore. So these titles, again, there's a lot of room for mid-card titles. As you mentioned earlier on, though, then you get the tag titles, which aren't really being defended when they easily could be. And you touched on their, kind of opinions on Triple H's booking. Just Jay says, I have to say, Triple H has been absolutely amazing since taking over. The storylines, championship changes, and getting over screen time and developing every character so well. Now, I would say this is an example where both things can be true, because as you say, Lucas, and again, I know you're not anti-Triple H or anything like that, but just to give context to the viewers, essentially, you know, we've been talking lately about how this 5-match card is great, but sometimes can be detrimental. And then how some of these things he's done on Raw and SmackDown, again, as Jay mentions there, has been fantastic. He has given other people screen time. We've got DIY in a new feud now. They've just turned heel. You've got tag titles that are being defended, to be fair, on the SmackDown side at least. And then you've got people like Michin main event in shows. It was almost like they were getting the seeds ready for these mid-card titles before they actually unveiled them. So it's weird, you know, it's one of those things where you do need to take a step back sometimes and see how things do play out. But there are certainly things that, you know, as there are under any kind of regime, there's good and bad in it all, right? There are things that could be better. But I think for the most part, as Jay says, the Triple H era has been, I mean, it's clear. It's been one of the best in the modern wrestling history, at least. It's 100% up there with, you know, getting close to, at least in my opinion, the golden era and the attitude era. It is 100% on its way if it's not already there anyway. Again, sometimes it's hard to kind of conceptualize these things, but yeah,
I think it's difficult now because a lot of kind of effort and time is spent with the presentation of the product, and that's something which obviously just was not the case like prior to you know, this past kind of period. And you know, it is one of those, like, for better or for worse things, because if you look back at old WWE, and that's why, you know, someone did mention about obviously when you watch kind of old WrestleManias, like it's very difficult to kind of get like a newer fan to kind of watch like a WrestleMania 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like, and that kind of, that, you know, it's a really good age of wrestling, but then it's very hard for a modern fan to understand that there's DQs happening and countouts happening at WrestleMania, you know, all that.
Yeah.
Random people who only just, you know, started like a month ago now on the WrestleMania card.
Other than Fandango, you won't really get that anymore. Yeah.
Even that, it was built to it, at least.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's just a very different kind of thing, isn't it? And this presentation, the presentation era, I might even start calling it, is obviously very important, you know, to them. And obviously they've got sponsors, they've got like a new ownership, you know, regime and all that, which we're kind of getting used to. But, and ultimately, I think actually something that the comment just said is, I think Triple H may be actually better at booking television versus booking pay-per-views, potentially, because I think something Vince was very good at, even though, yes, there were obviously problems, is that he did make sure that more divisions were featured on the pay-per-view, and he wasn't afraid of kind of doing like these 5, 6, 7 minute matches, you know, on the pay-per-view. And yes, sometimes there'd be nonsensical finishes and there'd be, you know, some card change and all that kind of stuff, but it did feel a bit more like you got to see more of the product. Whereas if you're someone watching tonight, you know, you're seeing the men have 2 world championship matches, the women have 1, and then you've got another kind of, you know, blood feud kind of rivalry with Sami and Drew, and you've got a mid-card championship. You're not seeing tag team wrestling represented at all. You know, you're not just seeing, like, I don't know, just like the random matches they used to have, like back in the day, like when they weren't afraid to be like, oh, we're going to just have you and you just feud over something silly that happens backstage. Now you know, you know, like,
you spilt coffee on someone type. You know, you used to get things like that. You know, but I guess that, again, there are pros and cons to it all, because, like you say, we can't pretend that it was always a success. There were many times where you saw a 2-minute US title match and you were like, what the hell was that? That was more detrimental to the guys than anything. But then you had the famous kind of WrestleMania paydays, right? You know, whether it be a Battle Royal or the Money in the Bank. Let's be honest, a lot of the guys were thrown in that. Sometimes it seems to get a nice paycheck as well. But again, really interesting times that we're in. Of course, it's a really interesting time to be a wrestling fan. And we thank you all so much for choosing to kind of get yourselves hyped up with us tonight on this build-up stream. If you're new here, my name's Scott. Over there even is Lucas, and we are part of Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling channel, and these build-up streams are exactly that, getting us and you guys in the mood for the main event, and quite literally the main event tonight. Simona says, do you know where I can see the event in Italy? Now, we touched on this earlier on a little bit, buddy, but I'm not entirely sure where it is in Italy, but I would suggest at least looking on YouTube, because I know a lot of countries, UK included, it is being streamed live on YouTube. If it's not live on YouTube in Italy, but you've got a VPN, then you might find a way to get it on YouTube as well. Heart Attack 35 says, do y'all think Cody will be Stardust tonight? You know what? This is really interesting. We'll get to Cody talk in a bit more detail very soon, but I really like the fact that not only was Kevin Owens wearing a Stardust t-shirt, he was wearing what looked like a bootleg Stardust t-shirt where he had a WWE title on his shoulder, which he never actually held as Stardust, obviously. I think it might even be the Universal title or something like that. I mean, Kevin's been great lately wearing random shirts that always seem to tie in. You know, he wore American Dreams, Dusty Road shirts and stuff like that. Really loving what he's doing. Man, honestly, the other day, like, it must have been after watching last week's SmackDown highlights, I was literally saying the same thing. I was literally like, this guy is just such a good performer. Like, he's genuinely one of the best in the world. Like, he's got to go down as one of the best in history in future, which is a big claim. But I honestly think he's so entertaining for a guy that, as we mentioned on last month's stream, you know, did have that decision to make a few years ago about what he does next with his career. And yeah, there were low points and there were times where he was a little stagnant, you know, but like, when he turns it on, man, whether it's babyface or heel, like, people massively get behind him. And I think he's just such an incredible talent. And as you say, he just gets it. And it's no surprise when, you know, we all know how much of a big fan of wrestling he is, as you alluded to last month as well. Again, you know, naming his kid Owen, you know, he's the WWF mark, to use a kind of slightly insulting term, but hey, aren't we all? You know what, let's get to that match actually. Again, as we mentioned earlier on, it might end up being the main event. You'd imagine it would be, right? The actual main event of Saturday night's main event. WWE title on the line between Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens. And I gotta be honest, I'd love to see Kevin Owens win it, just for the reasons that we've just mentioned there, and also just to shake things up. But I understand WWE's kind of temptation, I would imagine, to make Cody somewhat of a long-term champion, even though I believe he's just past 250 days. You would feel like that is pretty long in itself, because of what we've just gone through as far as getting it off of Roman. I think anything under a year might feel too short. Not too short, but it might feel like, well, he didn't do Roman. If you're a new fan, you just started watching wrestling in the last 3 to 4 years, and you go, but Cody, he was never Roman Reigns, was he? You know, so there is a risk that they've booked themselves into a corner there. But a great shock to the system, a big kind of flag in the bloody ground, essentially, for the reboot of Saturday night's main event would be to change the title here. Now, I don't think it's going to happen, as much as I'd love to see it. And this isn't because I don't like Cody. I think he should have become champion. We're all on board when it came to the story, right? Another big thing as to why I don't think he's gonna lose the title tonight is what's in that kind of briefcase thing that we've seen teased on social media. Now, we'll get to that in a minute. First of all, let's get to the match itself. What are your thoughts on a potential title change here between Cody and Kevin?
I am with you. I kind of would want to see it, but I don't think it's something we're going to see. I think the wheels at the moment are most likely already in motion from a booking point of view. You know, comes to obviously the next stage of what we're going into, which obviously is the road to WrestleMania. One mustn't forget that. We are very much firmly, you know, one has to imagine, going to be accelerating forward to that. And I guess now it's just a case of what that looks like. You know, who does Cody face? Who is winning the respective Rumble matches for the men and women? And, you know, who's just going to come back and point at the sign and say they're facing the other champion? You know, that's kind of the season we're in. You know, so and it feels weird because obviously this feud kind of started very coolly, didn't it, in the summer, and in a very respectful way. I thought they had quite a really good match at Bash at Berlin, actually, which opened the show, and then it accelerated off screen, in a kind of weird thing that they put on WWE.com or the YouTube or something like that, with Kevin Owens doing the turn. But not on a television show, which, you know, I don't think it was the first time we see something like that, I'm being deadly honest. I think in this new era of obviously the content kind of being on the different platforms and all that kind of stuff, they've got a lot of people to please now. You know, they've got Twitter, something like that. You know, they've got Twitter and they've got, you know, the Speed Championship to that to please. They've got obviously still their home in the United States, at least, Peacock. And obviously the USA network to please, as well as now the big gun being Netflix, which is a global thing. And this is where it's fitting with this show. I think with Saturday Night Main Event, what we will see, which I think will feel different from the other PLEs, is there will be next to no international kind of sway with these. I believe that Saturday Night Main Event is going to be very much a USA kind of thing. And I think another area they might use Saturday Night Main Event for is on months where they do run international PLEs, they would do a domestic Saturday Night Main Event the week before, or even the same weekend, depending on the roster they're using. Remember, they only book 5 matches for pay-per-views, don't they? So roster, like just have 5 matches on the Saturday night on the pay-per-view and 5 matches on Sunday, you know, or whatever, or vice versa. And so I think that's ultimately where we're at with it. And with that being said, it then just leads me to think that Cody Rhodes is winning because Cody Rhodes is the American nightmare, and this is a show for Americans. So to have him do anything else would be counterintuitive to the programming. I think that Kevin Owens has come as close as possible to doing so, but he's not going to be the one, which it kind of sucks because I don't know if he ever will be the one, and that hurts because I am with you. I fully believe that Kevin Owens is probably one of the best wrestlers in the company, if not in wrestling in general, and he's had a Hall of Fame career already.
Yeah.
But when we are totting up title reigns and moments, down the line, we're going to have to address the fact that, Kevin Owens to date has only held, if we count NXT, fair enough, 2 world championships in the company.
Yeah, and even the one he did win, I mean, it fit in with his character, but it was under controversial, you know what I mean? Like, he's never really had, and it was in that period where he had a lot of kind of strange moments with that title. We mentioned earlier on Finn Bálor, of course, being a one-day champion as well, and this new world heavyweight title is a way to kind of rectify a lot of those issues, and maybe that's where he's more likely to see success. But even with that, there's a lot of people that are kind of clawing away at that side of the card as well.
After it for him at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and obviously with they're teasing obviously the shake-up / draft that's coming. It'll be very interesting seeing how the roster looks come January once Netflix have dug their heels in, because now, like I said, WWE have a global company who are going to start calling some shots about what they want, and so they're going to have to think about how they want Raw to look and feel, and obviously Raw is going to become now a very different show. Particularly for obviously international views, versus SmackDown and NXT. But yeah, Kevin Owens, this has been a good run, but I just think no. In terms of all the Stardust thing, hate to say it, but they are working us to get some merch out of this, maybe.
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised.
I don't think Cody Rhodes will come out as Stardust.
Nah, maybe somewhere distantly in the future. I mean, he did rock the cartwheel that time.
Yeah, I think he might add something to a gear or something.
Yeah,
but ultimately it's leading to merch.
I think one day he might kind of reclaim it. Because, and use this kind of, people to, make to the big out of me and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't think we're going to get anything like that. But appreciate your comment either way, Heart Attack.
2K25, maybe.
Yeah, could be, yeah. We could rewrite the history of Stardust. It could be seen as something completely different. Cody Burris 678 says, "Are you ready for tonight?" Another viewer joining us from over there on the Rebellious Noise Twitch. Thank you so much for joining us, buddy. Yeah, we are ready, and that's what this stream is all about, to get us and you guys in the mood. So hopefully we are doing exactly that. Now, we touched on it a moment ago, but this match also has another kind of interesting point attached to it, and that is, of course, Triple H has given Cody Rhodes something, and I think we all know what that something might be. Quite hilarious, really, when he opened the case and the glow of gold came on his face, which was hilarious. Now, we've seen these cases, of course, recently when they unveiled the new championships at Crown Jewel. So obviously, we know it's a title. The gold hints at that, of course, as well. And surely it's going to be the Winged Eagle title. Now, I'm very excited to see this, and I actually think this is a nice way to go about it. Now, we've talked about this before on the channel as well, as far as titles and their kind of design, and how we basically understand that WWE is a marketing tool now as far as using the title that way. We saw these American sports teams getting their own versions recently, but before that, they basically were rewarded a WWE title for winning the Super Bowl, for example. So they are not going to move away from that anytime soon. The main titles have continued that theme when they got rid of the World WWE and the Universal and smushed them together to the Undisputed. They did the same thing there. Of course, the women's titles have looked the same way as well. But you can tell Triple H being a bit of a traditionalist. Some of the titles under his regime have changed into different kind of designs as well. We saw the same thing back in NXT. But I don't think the Winged Eagle is going to come back anytime soon long term. And as Triple H said in that promo, it's for one night only. Cody quite famously brought back the white strap version of the classic IC title, which is still a favorite of mine, and everybody loved that when that happened as well. And it just felt like when Cody was on the way to finishing his story, he'd been doing it with the Winged Eagle, and he's talked about it for years. Let's not kind of pretend he hasn't. And I think realistically, this is a great middle ground. To have it tonight is going to be fantastic. And they've got to be careful, of course, that it doesn't devalue the main version of the title they've got. And I think Triple H being very strict and say it's one night only, and it's going to fit in with the Saturday night's main event theme of this is a nostalgia-based PLE. And we'll talk a bit more about the nostalgic side to it in just a moment. But what are your thoughts, mate, on what is surely going to be the return, one night only, of the Winged Eagle?
Yeah, I think it's the correct way to use it. I wouldn't want to see this belt come back. In fact, I would go as far as say I don't want to see anything come back like from before. I think, we have to understand that everything evolves in this. Everything evolves. And I have to understand that we're now, when you see comments online and stuff, it's 30, 40-year-old men talking about things from 25 years ago, which is just a business that doesn't exist anymore. Like they don't need to cater like to us, because in the nice possible way that us all complaining and saying, oh, the belts aren't as good as they used to be, or there's too many belts, or this, that, and the other. We still go and watch the shows. We still go and watch the shows. But the younger, fresher people are in the crowd. The teenagers at the moment who about to probably start their first jobs and start earning some money. Those are people they're trying to please, and people like to feel like there's something that they were part of, which is very important. Again, when talking about the women's stuff, obviously a lot of these first the women. It's very important because their fan base, a demographic, is kind of filled now with these young girl fans watching it and wanting to see and feel a part of it, and they can feel a part now. Oh, I was there when the women's US title got introduced. It's a big moment, and I think similarly with the men, it's a case of the new belts, the new things that they're going to introduce. That's kind of how people have connected with the product. And so we'd be kind of doing it a service to be like, well, forget you guys, let's bring this thing back from 25 years ago. Because a certain section of the fan base preferred it. But I think it's the best way to it. I mean, I always liked when they did old school Raws. They haven't done one in age, actually. I know it's very much a Vince thing, but the whole presentation, they like bringing back the little jackets and like the stuff by the ramp and stuff. And again, NXT have done a bit of this, over the past kind of few months. They've had the commentators start there and stuff, and I think there's little bits and pieces, little bits of throwback things that I think we'll see throughout the broadcast, because again, something which you must remember, this is a TV broadcast in the States, and it's very much about it's very much about, I think, the nostalgia thing, especially around this time of year. It is that kind of feel. And so I think this belt situation, it suits it, and I guess this fits into Triple H's WWE and his vision of, obviously, like he likes to kind of give these things like a go and their due thing. But I think as long as it's kind of made known, it's a one thing, maybe just for his entrance or whatever. And then I think at the end, as long as he kind of holds up the correct WWE Championship belt, that's
or even both,
or both, as long as the one that is held and maybe perhaps in the hand, that's the hands, whatever. I think that's very important. I don't think it will devalue the belt that obviously he's got. There is the elephant in the room with that belt, obviously, as they haven't really decided what they're doing with the Universal Championship part of that. And it just seemed like it is just one belt now. Which is fair enough, but stop calling it Undisputed then, because you've already created another belt.
It's not Undisputed anymore. I think, the ball is in their court in this sense. There is always a risk of backlash, but or WrestleMania backlash. But what Cody could do is, as you say, lift up both belts and basically play into it. Kiss them both, introduce them to each other, something silly. Do you know what I mean? He could go like that and laugh about it, and then he comes out of SmackDown and everybody's hopefully calmed down and forgotten about it. Because I'm kind of with you. I mean, as much as I love the classic designs, I think there's a time and place for it, and I think tonight is a great way to reuse it. Going forward, I think there's almost a chance that you tarnish the legacy of the title if you bring it back, right? So the IC title that came back certainly kind of felt that way in the end. So when it first came back under Cody Rhodes, it was great. But what worked that time round was the fact that oval IC title, which I still have a soft spot for myself as a kid of the Attitude Era, had definitely run its course, and it definitely started to feel somewhat meaningless as a title anyway, and that gave it the boost it needed. So it was due a facelift, and it just so happened to be a classic design that was brought back. Now the WWE title doesn't need a new design, let's be honest. I think the one that people said most often was the IC, but that was hit and miss, and now they've added the blue. I think a lot of people started to come around on the IC title as well.
Yeah, I think if you kind of change something when it's kind of already got the perception of being negative or bad, then it's not going to ever be seen, not going to go against you.
Yeah.
But anything that's on top, there's no point.
Yeah.
And that's the point right now, like, you know, the WWE Championship, as much as I think, there's a lot of things I do think about the possible future direction for it, I still would say it is still very much the top prize in all of wrestling. You know, Cody is still sitting at the top. Like, sorry, Gunther, and sorry to whoever the current AEW champion is at the moment. They change it every week, so I'm too sure. Is it John Moxley? Is he the current champion in AEW?
I'd be lying if I said I was watching, mate.
Well,
I know Tony Storm came back. That's pretty cool, but other than that...
Well, by the TV rating, it seems like, not many people are. But yeah, I think John Moxley is the current champion. But yeah, I think definitely Cody Rhodes sits at the top of the pile of the champions.
Yeah.
And that belt is good. So yes, any change of that belt, I think, would be at the detriment to it.
Yeah.
Whereas a belt that people don't really care about, or belt's going through a bit of a bad time, I think people will. And yeah, it wouldn't be the right move to do it. It would look and feel very weird, unless they were then to change other designs of other championships.
A little bit out of place.
Because it would be very odd just being like, okay, well, we're the WWE and we've got all these champions, and we've got one random belt that looked like it's from 30 years ago. That just doesn't look, when you look at WWE.com, they have all the champions at the top. It will just look weird. I know it seems like a silly reason to not do it, potentially, but it just, again, going back to I'm dubbing it. I'm coining this phrase, the presentation era, because everything now is about the presentation. I think it would just look odd if one belt just looks so different from all the other belts that you have, and there's a lot of belts. Like, there's a lot of belts, and then this one belt can stick out, and I think that would be bloody odd, personally. But I think this is a nice little touch they can do, and just again, I think with Saturday Night's main event is a lot of people's memories of it, particularly from Americans' point of view, will be the kind of towards that classic era of the WWE, and even obviously more modern fans into that kind of, mid to late 2000s, sort of. I don't know. It makes you feel a bit old and a bit depressed saying nostalgia for that era, but I think there definitely is a noticeable gap. I mean, you identified it when you rewatched it in 2006. There's definitely like a noticeable gap when you're watching that kind of wrestling now. It's
weird though, because like I said, I watched that one the other day, and they were talking at the time about how they had just brought back Saturday Night's main event, and the first one or the last one was X amount of years, and I was like, hold on a minute. The gap between this one and today is more. And I was like, no, like, or close to, I was like, oh no, like, was it really that long ago? It doesn't feel that long, but I think that is getting old.
We're closer to WrestleMania 50 than WrestleMania 30.
Oh, God. Oh no! All right. On that note, let's move away from feeling old, Lucas. I'm going to get to some comments here. We've got brother BKO Contreras, Sports Entertainment guys. So shout out to everyone in the chat, including Rara and Pro Wrestling. Keep up good work on the channel. Appreciate it. And shout out from South Bronx, brother BKO Contreras, aka Sports Entertainment guy. Thank you so much for tuning in, mate. Really do appreciate you, and hope you're doing well out there in the South Bronx as well. We also got a long time friend of the channel, the deal, who says night ends with Cody holding up the winged eagle, and then The Rock comes out holding up the People's Champ belt. The Rock is due to show up. Now, The Rock probably will be showing up soon, you would imagine. I don't know if tonight is where you'll see it, and I think that title thing, I mean, the whole thing with The Rock being the People's Champ is a bit of a confusing thing anyway, I think, for fans, but I think that's probably a story we'll dive into a little bit more in the future, but the deal. Always great to see you here, buddy. Danjuma says KO, and KO will end the story. That's a great way to put it. I've never heard, I've not really heard anyone using that term kind of any time recently, at least. since we've moved away from him actually winning the title. So you're ending the story would be a funny thing if KO actually did do it and he kind of doubled down on that term as well, as he's clearly done his research by wearing a Stardust shirt. He's not afraid to dive into the closet essentially of the people that he's essentially fighting against. But again, tonight is going to be a really interesting show because, as we mentioned earlier on, the pace is going to be a little bit different. It is a 2-hour event, but you still have the 5-match card like you see on the PLE. We've got a world title being defended by Gunther against Damian Priest and his former running buddy Finn Bálor in the triple threat. You got Drew McIntyre and Sami Zayn, as some of the people in the comments mentioned earlier on, probably might end up being the shorter match here on the card when it means squeezing it into 2 hours. And again, it does kind of fit the two characters here. You've got the babyface Sami Zayn, who can get sympathy from the beatdown, and you've got the bad, naughty Mr. Drew McIntyre, who could do some dirty tactics to take Sami out. So that would make sense. We've already touched on KO versus Cody Rhodes quite a bit as well. Looks like, in our opinion on this channel, at least, we don't think there's going to be a title change, but hey, maybe that is the way you revitalize this brand. And then, of course, a big story going into this as well. We've finally got to the end of the tournament. We're going to crown a women's United States champion. Really looking forward to this one tonight here as well. A match we haven't really touched on, though, is Liv Morgan versus Iyo Sky. So, Lucas, what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, yeah, this is the match that even WWE have forgotten exists, actually. Since they put a lot of effort on, obviously, Rhea Ripley and War Games and all that kind of stuff happening. But yeah, the match is happening now. Iyo Sky is getting her women's championship shot against Liv Morgan. Now, I've had many issues with Liv Morgan and the Rhea Ripley feud for quite some time, and my main issue, and something which I'm just scared about tonight, is that Liv Morgan, I think, is yet to win a match
convincingly,
and it's dragging on like far too long. Like, obviously, look, the whole thing a few months ago was it a bad blood with the DQ and all this kind of stuff happening, the shark cage thing. Look, stuff happens. We get that as fans. Like, I get that. As a fan at first, you kind of react a bit badly to it, but then after you realise, look, these are all human beings. They made, a mistake was made, a call was made on the day, and it led to a finish which, no one's really happy with. But at the end of the day, it's just a mistake, isn't it? You have other times, but that you can't overlook the fact that Liv Morgan just hasn't won a match, like, convincingly. It's just a bit scary. Like, she's been champion for a very long time now, like, in terms of, this whole thing, and it seems they are potentially building back up to Rhea versus Liv. And this, sadly, is the problem with this kind of real long-term booking, because other than a real drastic kind of, shift from anything, it feels a bit like it's a no-brainer. Like,
you know where it's going.
Going to retain, and they're going to go to another Rhea Ripley versus Liv Morgan match, where one would imagine Rhea Ripley will win the championship back. But for me, that feels like it's a few months too late.
It's been awkward with Rhea, right? Because she had those 2 injuries, of course, which has really stretched out this feud, and also was kind of the lifeblood of the feud at the same time. But I'd agree with you. It's kind of, it feels like that's the way you wrap it up, because that's traditionally the way you do it, and it kind of, Rhea's a big star, and I can kind of see why they want the title back on her as well. But Liv is kind of, I've loved Liv's work lately, and I like her with Raquel as well. It reminds me of, the dudes of attitude. Shawn Michaels being protected by a Diesel is an image that comes to mind. But the problem is Liv needs to have won some things before Raquel came in, and then maybe got close and Raquel saved her. Raquel's, because that's the thing, she's going to save her every single time now. There's kind of no room for Liv to do it on her own. So it is a bit of a shame. And they've toyed around with Rhea and Iyo being like, we're mates, but I'll have to come after you or whatever it is. But surely that's just the kind of fake, create this fear that it might change.
We say that, but the segment on Raw was very much booked, and it felt like they were more pointing towards Iyo and Rhea than Rhea and Liv, So that's the only thing where you're just like, I guess maybe that was the intention of that segment. And this is the thing where wrestling gets you sometimes. The intention of the segment was to make us think that, because they're going to just go down the road again with Liv and Rhea. And it's just when that is set up for. We're in this really interesting era now where is that being set up for Raw debut on Netflix? Is that being set up for Rumble? The next Saturday night's main event? Do you know what I mean? WrestleMania? Chamber? Are they going to add in like another, like, you know, another international PLE or something, or big event in January, February time, you know, where this is built up for? In my opinion, I just think because it's been already kind of truncated by those injuries to Rhea Ripley, I would just get it over and done with as soon as possible. So just do the match, and if the goal is that Rhea wins the belt back, great. If the goal is that Liv retains, I mean, not great really, but you know, if there is a bigger, you know, if there's a bigger end game for Liv, and there are a few that you know, we like that have been absent from the division. A couple of the big names that come up, obviously Charlotte Flair, due back any day. She did a Mariah Carey defrosting meme a couple of weeks back, and of course Becky Lynch, who, you know, at the moment is not signed to the company, but it's believed that she will be somewhat making appearances, if not at the Netflix debut of Raw, at some point further down the road. And we have to imagine again, as we're on the road to WrestleMania, you know, is this the potential end game? And so is the Rhea feud a stopgap to get us to there? Potentially. But yeah, I'm between this and the Drew match where I'm like, yeah, one of these two is the one that sadly seems like it's going to be a short one, just because I haven't put much effort into this feud to begin with, and because the result is kind of, to many, would be deemed as a foregone conclusion. Do they just go, okay, let's just have it short then? Which will suck for Iyo, because I think she deserves to have that time given to her. But it's one of those where she's not really integral to this story, unless the story is to get the belt onto her and to drastically change everything they've already invested in, which usually, outside of, you know, injury, you know, major injury, or someone, you know, obviously letting their contract expire, which in some like case of Rhea Ripley, I don't think it's happening anytime soon. Usually they won't pivot from what they invested in. They put a lot of effort into this Rhea Ripley versus Liv Morgan thing, so it would be a bit weird if they then decided that, oh, Rhea and Iyo is now the direction we want to go in, particularly because Iyo hasn't really done much, and not her fault really. She hasn't been booked to do much since losing the title to Bayley back at WrestleMania. You know, from a single perspective, she's more been presented as part of a tag team with Damage Control, and that's mainly been because of Asuka's injury, obviously. Asuka got injured, and that's then put her in the tag team spot of Damage Control, versus, obviously, if Asuka was around, she could very much be by herself here. And the sad thing is, so could any of them in Damage Control. I mean, Dakota Kai has been the least tested out of them, let's be real. Again, that's because of injuries. But definitely when it comes to Iyo Sky and Asuka and even Kairi Sane, I think they're three women who we could have seen a lot more of in singles action over the past few months. But it's not something which at the moment has come to fruition in Triple H's WWE. But yeah, I think Liv Morgan will still be champion.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to see too many surprises happening here, but that's the thing with this show. Again, we're not sure. Is it PLE quality? Is it a special nostalgia shot on the arm right before Christmas, as you say? Is it a glorified Raw? It's kind of hard to tell at this moment in time. You know, the deal says, with this card being so predictable, I'm assuming there might be some big returns to get some pops. Could it be Lesnar and could it be Flair? Now, let's move on to possible surprises, because, again, it does feel like a space where you are going to get something at least to be a headline, even if it's not massively going forward, but to go, oh, do you remember that time that thing happened? Which is what I more think it will be. I don't think, as much as I've said quite a lot through this stream, that this feels a bit like a PLE. I think the 2-hour schedule and things like that does remind us that it's not a PLE, and the pacing will be different, and therefore the surprises, I think, will be different. Now, two sides of it, really. I do think there could be a surprise that leads into something going forward, but I don't think it would be as big as The Rock or even Lesnar, to be fair, because Lesnar's a kind of been a bit of a strange scenario. Who knows what's going on there, right? Flair could be the nostalgic pop, don't get me wrong. But that name reminds me of course, who we mentioned a moment ago, Charlotte Flair. Now, I think if anyone's going to come back as a big return tonight, I think it could be Charlotte Flair. There's 2 matches where she could.
Oh, yeah, so I read that as Charlotte Flair. But I guess, yeah.
No, I read that as Ric Flair. That's probably a good point. It probably is Charlotte Flair. You're probably right there, to be fair. But, yeah, I mean, Charlotte Flair is probably more likely of the two. And I think would make sense because it's going to happen eventually, right? Now, I said on our War Game stream that I'd like to have her to have jumped into the IC title picture, gone all the way to the final, and then lost to kind of make everyone fear, oh, no, not again. Even that, look, she's amazing, don't get me wrong, but let's be honest, she's been given a lot of titles in a quick kind of fashion. Not that she's not deserving and an amazing performer, but it is what it is. Now, I think her coming back is probably more likely than the match we just talked about there. And then beyond that, there are potential surprises when it comes to just a nice nostalgic pop on the night. Now, we know that Jesse Ventura is going to be involved in the show, which is quite exciting as well.
Hogan's got to be there, surely.
Hogan is another one that's been battered around a lot. Now, I know, controversial figure, and you always think, why are they doing Hogan when he does get such negative press these days? But at the same time, there was a big chunk of the audience that will basically lap it up anyway. And he is very linked, of course, to the era we're kind of referring back to here with the 1980s as well. Now, sadly, it is what it is, and a lot of the names from the era now aren't around anymore, including this guy who would often pop up on those old school Raws that you'd see back in the day, which I always feel like never knew what they were. They tried to be Attitude Era, but not enough, and they tried to be 80s, and that wasn't really part of Raw, and they were 93 Raw sometimes as well. Now this, I think, if anything, is going to have a very 1980s look and feel. We've seen that with the graphics already, and they've kind of hinted that as well. Jesse Ventura, of course. So what do you think from that era, Lucas? Could we see tonight maybe having a re-emergence, whether it be simply presentation of the way it's shot, or do you think there'll be any particular stars that are going to pop up tonight as well?
Ring announcer jackets, definitely.
Okay, yeah. Oh, you know what I'd like? Blue ref shirts, a little bow tie.
That'd be cool. I think they'll have them standing by the ring for the intro, for the cold intro like they used to.
Yeah.
I believe they might try a 80s style, maybe intro video.
Yeah.
Show. Particularly because NXT, when they did the Philadelphia or the 2300 arena, they basically stole the ECW.
Yeah, it was good that. Yeah.
The NXT stars. So I think we might see something like that.
Yeah.
Most likely red, white, and blue ropes.
Oh, that'd be cool.
I think, I mean, and this will again will fit the USA kind of thing, like down to a T. And I think that there may be other guests either backstage, or they may hop on commentary for certain bits. But I think they probably do backstage, because the card is being presented very seriously. So I don't think they're going to be like, oh, now here's like Slick to do big guest commentate,
calling out Gunther or something like that. Yeah.
Is Coco Beware still alive? Here's so and so to just do guest commentary.
Yeah.
But I think they do the little segment. They do a segment or two backstage. You know what? I guess as much as they're going to do 80s, they may need to obviously accept that, sadly, like we say, a lot of those names are past. Like I watched one the other day where I think, or episode of the Silence Main Event on YouTube.
Yeah.
I think about 90% of the card are just not with us.
It was a tough era. It was a tough era, you know.
Macho Man, Piper, just absolute greats. Just no longer, and for a long time now, no longer with us. So I think they may need to kind of maybe have the presentation maybe at ringside be 80s, but backstage vibe maybe be more Attitude Era.
Yeah, which is weird because it was the reverse for the old school Raws. You know, it used to always be Dusty Rhodes, Roddy Piper, Sergeant Slaughter, you know, backstage, and then Ron Simmons would come in with a damn. You know, it was that kind of stuff all the time.
An appearance backstage
Could
potentially.
do. I mean, the era we mentioned earlier on for that revival, he was very big in that. The one I was watching the other day, like, you know, he was trying to get out the match as King Booker as well. Could he get to a comment here from Hank Silent Hill? Says, when did it start, Hot Rod? And then I love this. He's called me Scott Rod. Lovely. Thank you very much, buddy. It starts in just under 25 minutes. Here in the UK, that would be 1 a.m. So 24 minutes away, actually. And again, I know a lot of the kind of territories around the world are able to watch it on YouTube. So if you can't find it on your TV listings, guys, check it out on YouTube. Also says, God save the king. Have fun, gentlemen. Thank you very much, mate. Thank you for joining us again over there on the Rebellious Noise Twitch channel. If you're joining us on YouTube, of course, in the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling channel, we appreciate you either way. If you haven't already, please subscribe to us on Twitch, over here on YouTube as well. As we mentioned earlier on, of course, you can find us on TikTok, X, and Blue Sky at RN Pro Wrestling. So we'll start wrapping up here, Lucas, because again, we are getting towards the main show itself. Again, quite a fun card. We've rattled through a little bit here, and again, very interesting to see how it will be presented tonight. Again, some of these matches you haven't quite being able to give you predictions for. So we'll do a quick fire one. I know you've already given you predictions for the US title match. You're giving you predictions for the WWE title, and you're giving you predictions for the Women's World Championship. But before we do go off air, just want to know your quick thoughts essentially on Drew versus Sami, and also on the World Heavyweight Championship. Will we see a title change in this triple threat? And will we see a crazy Drew McIntyre basically destroying Sami Zayn?
I get a feeling that Drew and Sami might not even end up starting.
Okay.
Or it's going to be called off or something like that.
Yeah.
Again, that might be the way to utilize it. As again, going back to previously what I said about the show, is it was always about just putting the stars out there to advertise them for different bits and pieces. And I think, you know, I do believe very firmly that they are maybe trying to collate as much kind of different, new, kind of cool things and moments going into the Netflix era. Because again, we're going to touch upon this. I mean, we're going to have, obviously at Reb Noise, you know, we do cover obviously all the WWE pay-per-views, and we are looking to cover the Netflix debut on Raw, as well as obviously future Saturday Night's main events and all that kind of stuff. So obviously, please subscribe for all that kind of stuff, and follow us to find out when we're going to be live and talking about stuff, because there's a lot of stuff that we want to talk about. And one has to imagine they're going to want all this kind of stuff for the Netflix thing. And like, you know when people think about, you know, Kofi's boom drop off the stage on Orton, we're going back to moments like 15 years ago now. Do you know what I mean? I think they're going to want to create. Netflix want their own kind of pilot reel, essentially. They don't want to recycle stuff's happened previously. And so I think this will be one where potentially either won't start, or it starts and Drew just starts going crazy, and we get like maybe like he puts him through the announce table, or he does like his you know, future shock onto the steel steps, something like that. So it's like a big thing that, you know, again, literally will be emblazoned upon the Netflix production truck come come Monday, Tuesday. So yeah, I'm tempted that one might not even start. I think Drew will be if he's not the winner, if it's not like a short match or whatever, I think it's still with the person who will leave kind of walking of their own.
Yeah.
Because they know this with Sami Zayn now. He does this underdog thing so really well. Just keep having him do it. Until time itself runs out. Just keep having him do it. Then in terms of the World Heavyweight Championship match, the triple threat contest, you know, I think it's just been made a triple threat because they've probably realised that they've only booked singles matches and no tags. And it just adds that kind of thing to it. You know, I just want Gunther and Goldberg, been deadly honest. I don't know why they bothered having this whole team, whole bit.
Yeah, that was strange.
So perfect.
Yeah.
Only thing I think of is that Bret Hart just refused to say the words, "You will face Bill Goldberg." Like, there's some petty reason in there. Bret had a contract that just said, I could not say these words. I could not say Goldberg will have a match. And they were like, oh, well, that's the match you want to do.
Yeah.
Like, no.
No.
No, not with me announcing it.
To be fair, it felt like a Survivor Series match, but then it could be
didn't it?
Rumble, but then we've also got WrestleMania not too far away now, so realistically they could hold out for that, and maybe that's the retirement match that Goldberg's been seeking, you know. So because they would have heard what Goldberg was saying, you know, a year or two ago about how if it ain't happening there, I'll do it elsewhere, and yeah, I think Triple H will see the money in a Goldberg retirement match, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's what we get.
Yeah, I mean, but what it's doing is, sadly, this is where, you know, fancy armchair booker comes in, and you kind of go, I've kind of gone a bit numb to anything else with this title now, because it's just a case of just confirm, is this Goldberg match on the table? If it is, then cool, great, I'm here for it. If it's not, then I don't know what there is really for Gunther. Because they have to address there's an elephant in the room when it comes to Gunther, is the fact that he gets no bloody reaction in the United States, and it's troublesome. It's one of those where it's troublesome. It was troublesome previously, but he was holding, obviously, at that time a mid card title, being the IC title, but he's now holding the cornerstone of Monday Night Raw, and it's not getting a reaction. And I think the better way he was getting a reaction was as a babyface, kind of being the kind of just funny, kind of like, he has these kind of funny, like, little one-liners and quirky kind of bits and pieces, but they're trying to present him still as the bad guy, and it's not working. And so that, you know, does leave me thinking that they made basically that combined story with the triple threat element, which usually in the past we have seen triple threats utilized as a way to get the belt off of someone, but without having them obviously be pinned directly. That does lead me to maybe thinking that could happen here. And then that frees Gunther up to then just face Bill Goldberg in the match that people want, whenever that may be. But out of the two that would be left, I cannot sit through another Damian Priest title run. So it needs to be Finn Balor. So I'll actually go with Finn Balor to win. Oh, yeah, I'll go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, look, I said earlier on before you came on air, man, like that if anyone's gonna win the title and take it from Gunther, it's gonna be Finn. I like Priest, but I think at the moment, if you're gonna freshen it up, it's got to be completely fresh, and it's got to be Finn Balor.
Because Finn was the match originally, wasn't it? And then Priest got added on Raw.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like they had a plan, and so potentially it was already there anyway. And Goldberg versus Gunther was is something that could be a non-title match, and this is of course something we'll dive into even further if this does become something. But it could be a non-title match, so you can get the best of two worlds here. But then there's also the argument that Goldberg going after the title one last time could be the hook as well, retiring as champ or something like that.
I think they went that world too many times.
Yeah.
In his recent return, I think that they, again, probably need a deeper dive, but they lucked out with box office gold when it came to Brock and Goldberg. They lucked out big time, and there's a well of matches that I think WWE will always return to if they've done well previously, because they would do well again. Which is why they did Reigns and Lesnar so many times.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking when you said that.
It always put bums in seats.
Yeah.
Every single time that match got announced, and they will, obviously, other people were involved, and other matches and all that kind of stuff. Well, I get that. And, you know, it's not just the Brock and Reigns show, but that match, every single time they put it on, it drew money. And it's always a world they will return to, or would return to. Obviously, Lesnar's now obviously got a controversial marker over him, and hopefully we'll see him again in the future. But if there's nothing else to do, they will just go Reigns and Lesnar one more time.
Yeah.
And they will will that out. They could have willed. I reckon if the Brock stuff hadn't happened, we would have seen that match already again.
You might be right, actually, yeah. Because I feel like it's a different era, but at the same time, it kind of isn't. You know, they can always go back to it.
Yeah, because you got Heyman involved. You still got Heyman. I think you still got the main kind of story pieces. story players there, you can always go back to it.
Yeah.
And another one that obviously was always profitable was Lesnar and Goldberg in terms of like this second era, and they lucked out with that. And so his first run with the belt was actually, I think, the right call. I hate to say it. I know we spoke about him earlier, Kevin Owens. He lost obviously to Goldberg, but I think that was a big part of creating what WWE wanted to create that time round with Goldberg.
Yeah, this new version of it.
And then the Fiend the reign leading off the Fiend was an issue, but him beating the Fiend, I actually didn't think was actually bad. And they utilised that in the Drew feud a couple of years later, when obviously, Goldberg's kind of made the thing that, he comes back and he wins belts off people, but he loses them straight away because you can't defend them. And I think that was a problem where, it was creating where you've gone to that well twice now. You couldn't keep going back to it. But I think in terms of Goldberg versus Gunther, just let it be Goldberg versus Gunther in the match. Have Bret Hart ref.
And on that bombshell, I think it's time we get out of it. You never know, mate. It might be set up on Saturday night's main event. You know what? At the end of tonight's show, we're going to be coming back with an instant reaction review. So if for some reason Bret Hart does show up and become a special guest referee between Gunther and Goldberg, you'll hear about it and our thoughts here on this very channel as well. So thank you very much for tuning in, guys. This has been the build-up show. As I say, we're usually here for PLEs, but this one felt kind of special, right? So we've jumped on to give you a live stream building up towards Saturday night's main event. I want to thank everybody in the comments tonight, whether it's been on the Rebellious Noise Twitch channel or those that have joined us on the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling YouTube channel as well. Thank you so much for your comments, and even to those that have been lurking in the background as well. Of course, I want to say a big thank you to Lucas for joining us as well. And we are about 13 minutes away from Saturday night's main event. As I said earlier on, I hope you've enjoyed Saturday night's preliminaries here, and we will see you later on for our instant reaction review. Thanks, everyone.
Welcome to the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling channel. On this channel, we bring you some great content from inside and outside of the squared circle. We will go through and offer some in-depth analysis of the biggest events of the year, as well as bringing you exclusive interviews with some of the industry's biggest names. There will also be live show reviews, in-depth features, and podcasts. So make sure you give that subscribe button a slam so you don't miss any of the action.